Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. It's me, Ryan, with the awesome AlphaPicks guys for the Friday fix. I'm doing the intro in a quiet bit, but I need to go back out to my table, and I'm hoping it's not going to be too loud. So please holler if the sound is appalling. I'll tell you what I can do. I can do the legals whilst I wait for them. Nothing discussed in this space session constitutes trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PiQ Global Limited, Traders PiQ or PiQ Suite. And that, of course, includes the hosts, which is, as you know by now, myself and the AlphaPicks lads when they show up. Michael Brown is in the wings, ready to step in if needed, because I did have to ditch him earlier on. Hello, Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, you'll be very impressed that I got from Wheels down to the Stafford in about 71 minutes. Very, very impressed with myself. Is anyone else joining? Can you hear me, Mr. Brown? Yeah. I've now got the giggles picturing you finding the emoji. Oh, God, just me and you, mate. Can I tell any jokes? Here they are. Bloody about time. Invite to co-host. Co-host invite sent. Here's Jesse. Invite to co-host. Oh, God. It's all getting loud again.
Gentlemen, good afternoon.
Just, you're going to have to let me know if the sound in the background is too much. Is it really bad?
It's not too bad.
Right, well, what I'll do is I'll try and speak as little as possible when it's going on, but let me just quickly do the intro. Obviously, everyone, I've already done the legals, so that's out of the way. Michael Brown kept me company whilst you guys were a bit late, but, we won't mention that anymore. And yes, Friday Fix, little review of the week and some of your thoughts. So take it away, guys.
Yeah, also a very sort of international crowd today, isn't it?
Oh,
Obviously,
yeah.
yourself just flying
Yeah.
back in and Jesse in Mexico. So, yeah,
Yeah,
covering
I'm
24-hour desk.
I'm absolutely, yeah, exactly that, right? We need someone in Asia, please. Don't do the eyes. Oh no. But yeah, I am convinced that Jesse did shit himself because there's no reason to be up at this early in Mexico at this time of day.
Mate, I've been falling asleep at like 9 p.m. and getting up at like 4. I
But you
haven't
sound like
quite
Mr.
haven't quite
Brown.
adjusted.
You sound like Mr. Brown in Royal Tunbridge Wells.
Fine. Well, I'll kick it off. I actually wanted to talk about China again, which basically started and ended the week in terms of interesting bits and bobs. Monday, obviously, Chinese regulators came out that they'd open an investigation into Nvidia for some violations on anti-monopoly jazz, which clearly appears to be a little bit more of a politically driven action than a legal one from my perspective. Obviously, given the US export controls on chips, etc., that they're putting on, and obviously the likely impact of Trump's inauguration and his tariffs in Q1 of next year. So obviously there's that sort of thing that was rattling around at the start of the week, and then obviously towards the end of the week we had President Xi, and I hope I pronounce his name with the right accent, as always. He obviously came out and said that, we want to have dialogue with the states, we don't want confrontation, we can have a win-win situation, etc., etc. From that perspective from China at the end of the week from their conference. So I suppose the question I pose to both of you chaps is, with this China-US story, both on tariffs, both on, action that's impacting stocks. Obviously, Nvidia fell about 3% in Monday trade, largely off the back of this news. Do we think this is going to be a little bit more tit for tat into next year, or do we think this is a bit of a storm in a teacup and actually a lot of this chatter is going to sort of fade away into 2025?
So to answer your main question, tit for tat, absolutely. Yeah, this is what happens, right? It's what happened in it's what happens in general, but specifically when Trump was last in office. I don't anyone was around then will remember all the trade deals, the trade deal 1, trade deal 2, and that, it was like 90% done for about 6 months. Every day we had 90% done headlines. It was just it got painful towards the end. But just to go back to what you said about Nvidia and also Xi comments. So one thing, obviously, I completely agree with you. It's definitely a politically motivated thing from China to do that to Nvidia. One thing that's worth noting is that Nvidia did increase their team in China by, I think it was 200. I read they've got a team that actually based in China doing something to with AI. So again, I'm guessing that all these decisions are politically motivated, right? So it's, yeah, you would imagine that Nvidia is saying, well, look, okay, well, maybe don't go too hard on us, and we'll kind of put more staff and more actual stuff in China. That's how I look at it. And just secondly, you raised the point about Xi. I'm hoping that's how we pronounce it. That's how I've always pronounced it. Obviously, Trump invited him to the inauguration, and admittedly, that was whilst I was waiting for me bag. So I might be wrong. There might be a more recent headline, but as of about an hour ago, I read that he's actually turned down the invitation, or words to that effect, according to some sources. So that's an interesting one. I think it was unlikely that he would have turned up anyway, but it's how does Trump perceive that? If Trump perceives that as, oh, he's just busy and he wouldn't come over anyway, then that's fine. But if Trump perceives that as a snub, we do know that Trump loves to get personal.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
sorry, that was a very long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. No. Yeah. The latest I saw was that. He's not coming, essentially. Although also, I also think to a certain extent it is quite good. Well, sort of brinksmanship from Trump in terms of, he was the one who threw the invite out. If he
Absolutely,
knew
mate.
that Xi was
Nailed it.
unlikely ever to come, right? It's like inviting that friend to a party that you don't really want to be there, and he's away, but you still invite him anyway. It's like, because then the decline is on his side.
Oh, hang on. So you mean like when I invited Jesse to next week's PiQ little beer, knowing he's in Mexico?
And he said he's in
Yeah.
Mexico. Exactly. So yeah, I think it's an interesting one. We'll see how it plays out. Also, the Nvidia headline you're referring to, that also caught my eye. Mainly, actually, not because of the hiring in China, but because it's related to autonomous vehicle technology that they're trying to
Sorry,
push
that
over
was
there.
it. Yes, you're right. It
Which is a
wasn't AI.
slightly,
Yeah.
well, I think obviously throwing AI in there as well, but it's definitely a little
Yeah.
bit of
Why
a
not? If in
random
doubt.
pivot. Autonomous vehicles from Nvidia, a little section they
I
might be
want.
getting into.
That's a good point actually, because I know there's obviously loads of concerns from all countries, all governments about AI, automated, or whatever we're calling it, driving, robo driving or whatever, how much data it collects from that country, and everyone's wanting to try and use domestic or at least kind of friendly, friendly power software, if that makes any sense. Because obviously, if you remember, is why it took so long for Tesla to be able to use full self-driving, if you want to call it that, in China, because the Chinese were like, well, hang on, you're going to be just basically mapping everything about our country. And there was remember as well, they wouldn't let government officials use it because they were going into like government compounds and all stuff like that. It's something like that I remember reading.
It's a bit obscure, isn't it? Yeah. The last thing I wanted to throw out there on NVIDIA China, first little stat of the day. So in NVIDIA's latest Q3 results, what percentage of revenue came from China?
Oh, you bastard. That's a very good question.
I don't
Do
know
you
the
know this
answer.
one?
I don't know the answer. I've not had a look at the document, but I'm going to let Ryan
I love the
make a
fact that you
market for me.
occasionally you admit that you don't cheat.
I'll always admit if I know.
Yeah, all right. Good. Okay, so what was the question again? So what percentage of Nvidia's revenue
China
is
revenue.
derived from China?
Yeah, as of latest earnings.
Oh, I'm going to say, I think it's going to be surprisingly low. I'm going to go 16%.
Okay, I
Okay.
had 20% in my mind, so I'll go higher. Then I'll go 17%.
Oh, you
Okay.
wanker.
Right. I'm actually very impressed. It's 15%.
Oh, my
Oh,
days.
nice.
Oh, brilliant.
Fantastic.
Hang on. Am I right? If I've got this, hang on. If I can remember correctly, I think I was like one out on a question last week as well, which was a complete guess as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very, very well played. Yeah, I mean, great. Yeah, finger on the pulse.
Complete
So,
luck, let's be honest. Blind squirrel.
Yeah, you did get 5 wrong in the higher low the
wow,
other
he's
week.
steady.
Oh,
He's
mate.
not
Oh,
far
God. He's
away.
got that
Go back
tattooed
to
on his
bed, Jay.
inside
Won't
leg,
he?
hasn't
Got to
So,
bring him
he?
back
Guys,
down.
cheers, mate. Yeah, thanks. How's Mexico? Oh, God. Do hope no cartels are listening.
Moving swiftly on, actually, I
Yeah,
see
please do.
our mutual friend, Mr. Michael Brown's listening in. So something he mentioned on the Morning Blast on Tuesday, I believe it was, about Alphabet's new quantum computing chip.
Oh yeah, no, that was it. Because when he said he caveated it with, "I have no idea what I'm about to say, but it sounds important," or something like that.
Yes. Yeah. Which I mean, I was exactly in the same boat as him. Willow, which is the chip's name, as we're sort of humanizing these AI chips, has the ability to solve in minutes problems that would take supercomputers millions of years. But the thing that certainly struck me from this story, which bizarrely seemed to get a lot of press in the early part of the week, was that the caveat they put on it was that it's years away from being able to carry out any commercial operations.
Oh,
So
okay.
from my perspective, I don't know why this story got so much press beyond the obvious sort of headlines of this is an exceptionally powerful bit of kit, as it
Yeah.
were.
Yeah, that's
It's
nice. Like the working men's technical
yeah,
correspondent there.
exactly. Yeah.
Nice bit of kit that.
No, no, it does a lot of stuff. It's the in terms of implications for Alphabet's share price, or even for the sector in general, I think it's a little bit of a sort of a swing and a miss in
Yeah,
terms of I don't think this
absolutely.
materially adds anything to the value
because
of the
because
of the
this
company.
quantum computing is, if like, again, I this is just kind of stuff that I kind of goes across in front of me on the screen. This is me. I do not know anything about quantum computing. I've struggled with copy and paste. I still use a Commodore 64 at home. But
Mm.
there's quantum computing, the kind of the notion of it, and people been doing research into it for many years. It's not like Apple were the only people, or whoever it was. Was it Apple? I can't remember now. Was it Apple that's done
What did
this?
the first? No, Alphabet.
Alphabet, sorry, Alphabet.
Mm.
Yeah, it's not like they're the only person researching it. So we don't know what else is kind of close to market. And as you said, I think the hype was, oh my God, it's ready now. But I like, until you just mentioned it, I had no idea that they weren't remotely close to actually rolling this out. So,
Mm.
so there might be, yeah, I'm guessing there's other companies that are very close as well.
Mm.
So one question, actually, maybe this is a show that we need to get Cam on specifically for. But Jesse, you might know, you have your finger on the crypto pulse a little bit. I've seen many threads from experts. 50% are saying that this is really bad for Bitcoin. 50% saying it makes no difference. So if anyone could tell me if it does make a difference or not, I'd be hugely appreciative.
Yeah,
Mm.
I'm the same as you. I've seen like a split on information of does it impact like Bitcoin mining or not? Will it increase the supply going forward, or the rate of supply? I don't know what the answer is, because there's lots of different
Yeah, right. And
answers
everyone's an
out there.
expert.
Yeah,
And like
yeah.
these are like when you look at their bios and stuff, these are genuine, meant to be genuine experts in their field, and no one
I've
seems to be able to agree.
The only one thing I've read is that there's something about the Bitcoin like I know nothing about this, so I could be completely off. Something about the code that it can it can make itself like it can develop and become more challenging. So even as technology develops, it's still like slow to crack, something like that. I don't know if that
Yeah,
was
I think
some
let's just hold our hands up and say,
BS.
look,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
need some smarter people in the room for this
It's
Yeah,
one.
it's not a good look for the Friday Fix team, is it? When so we'll move swiftly on. We'll leave that
Yeah.
one. We'll leave that one as it is. Into Wednesday now. CPI inflation out of the states was ticked slightly higher, up to 2.7%. The one from my perspective was actually reading past that and looking at the core figure, which at 3.3% has basically been the same for the past 3 months now, and is something that we flagged up. And actually, if you want to go even further into it, if you break down and look at the components that are made up of the core figure, the actual composition is much more akin to the inflation print from January of this year than it has been sort of throughout the summer. So
Yeah.
I think in terms of that kind of element, that the start of the year and the end of the year, obviously inflation has come lower, but the makeup of inflation is broadly the same. I
Yeah.
think that's certainly something that the market took as a sign to sort of cement that cut for the Fed next week, and obviously, yeah, help to propel equity markets to fresh all-time highs
Yeah.
again on trading on
So,
Wednesday. So yeah,
so can I interrupt? Because obviously I
sure.
don't. I know you've got loads of notes, so you might be talking about the Fed at some point anyway. But is this a good point for a time for me just to kind of make a comment on the Fed and next week?
Absolutely.
Cool. So there's a there's a I'm seeing an increasing number of people suggest that yes, 25 is obviously, we know 25 nailed on, right? But there's a few people now starting to say, oh, maybe cut 50 is, something that should be thought about as well. It won't be, but one of the reasons why it won't be, as how long we got, but one of the key reasons why I think it's important to remember is the Fed hate spooking the market, like with a passion, right?
Yep.
And the fact that 25 is almost nailed on, priced in, as Michael Brown said on one of the blasts this week, that makes, that is kind of self-fulfilling. If the Fed sees that the market is completely convinced it's going to be 25, they've done nothing to suggest that, like, they've done nothing to kind of try and tell the market it's wrong. Therefore, it's going to be 25. And then, as Michael Brown said, they hate, surprising the market at the best of times. They're certainly not going to do it in kind of Christmas market liquidity kind of, or lack of liquidity. So I think anyone that you see kind of going, there's a slim chance of a 50, give them a wide berth. I think it'd be ludicrous if they did that.
There was Phil, you put a tweet out. It was a couple of months ago, before one of the Fed meetings. How before the speakers go into the blackout period, basically the rates market is only ever been like a maximum of 3 basis points out of the final decision. So yeah, basically what you're saying, Ryan, that they're not going to want to spook markets before they go into
No.
their blackout window. They want to get the markets on
Yeah,
side,
and this
we're at
just
25.
be
So
clear, everyone loves hitting on or taking a big old dump on central bankers and stuff, but the Fed, in my humble opinion, are very, very good at their communication. Even like they use sources, they use like the Wall Street Journal geezer,
Nick.
Nick, um, it, everyone loves hitting on them, but I think they do a very good job on this, and that's why we're very, very seldom surprised.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add on that. Yeah, I think spot on. It's completely priced.
And if I'm not wrong, do we get a dot plot at next week's meeting, which could be a bit more information for markets?
That's a very good question, and I'm ashamed that I'm not
believe,
even sure.
I think it's the
I'm
last
waiting for
one in
Michael
each
Brown to stick
quarter.
a thumb up or thumb down.
Go on, Michael.
Go on, hurry up, Michael.
I think there's a slight delay in spaces, so maybe we'll get one in a second. I think it's the dot plot, so we should get some more information for the quarter ahead, which markets will digest and have a look at the statement.
Again. I think I wouldn't be surprised if we see some Yeah, there we go. Thanks, Michael. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Powell, and also like comments afterwards, kind of really ram home the uncertainty aspect, because obviously Trump coming in, Trump doesn't even know exactly what he's going to do yet. It's hard. You can't expect the Fed to know what he's going to do because even he doesn't know. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some, heightened uncertainty and all that bollocks. But we'll see.
Yeah. While we're talking monetary policy, actually segues quite nicely into obviously yesterday, ECB and SNB cutting. Actually, going to hand it over to Jay because he wrote a piece that obviously we put out this morning on the SNB. And I think this is probably first buzzword of the phrase this year, certainly from the Friday Fix, negative interest rates. So Jay, over to you.
Oh, that was a bit of a dramatic introduction.
I should be on blue. I should be a blue.
Yeah, God, that was a bit of a hospital pass. That I'm not going to lie.
So yesterday we had a lot on the central bank front in Europe. You had the ECB cutting 25 basis points. However, there were some members that said they would have been in favour for 50, and it seems to be that a 50 basis point cut in Q1 next year is still a high possibility for the bank, especially if things kind of deteriorate in France and Germany. So we'll have to watch that. Then the other, which was probably the shock of all of the banks this week, was the SNB cutting 50 basis points when the 25-50 was pretty much a coin flip. But
I think I did read it. Was it 30? I think technically, it was 35 basis points was priced in. So
yeah. But what's interesting about the SNB is now they're only 50 basis points away from zero rates. And they really want to control the appreciation in the franc, and they are running out of tools to do that, especially as the franc is viewed as a haven asset, and there seems to be more and more geopolitical uncertainty around the world. So it's an interesting one next year to see how much the franc slows, or if it continues its increase and its rally, especially when you look over in Europe. at the ECB, they're at 3.25% now rate. And there's 125 basis points worth of cuts priced in for next year.
Yeah.
So the ECB have a lot more room to cut, and they will outcut the SNB, which will just put more pressure or upward pressure on the franc. So their options are really negative rates or currency intervention, which isn't going to be viewed in good light from the US. So that's going to be an absolute last resort for them. So it's a very interesting situation for the Swiss bank that we will definitely be monitoring next year, and we'll have to see what happens there.
So very much on the point you said about having little room to cut, I think it's probably a good little segue, because I've mentioned this a couple of times, I think in the blast, and I think actually I mentioned with you guys last week. Moving like swiftly over about 5,000 kilometers or miles, whatever it is, to Japan. Obviously, we've heard news this week, and sorry, Phil, if you were about to come on to this, but we've heard news this week that this hike, that we were expecting is now looking less likely, with some strategists saying they probably won't even cut until after March. Sorry, hike, fuck me, it's just hard to get into the habit of actually Bank of Japan are hiking, not cutting. But anyway, so as I said to Michael, I think the Bank of Japan, not for the first time, have completely fucked this up. Because, you know, as we all know, my favourite phrase when it comes to central banks is central banks should hike when they can, cut when they must. And the Bank of Japan had ample time and opportunity to hike, and they didn't do it. And, you know, we're now at a point when it looks increasingly likely that we might even get a cut before a hike, and they just haven't they haven't used this time to build some kind of leg room to then cut into, because they're going to be cutting from a position of, well, a very poor position to begin with now if we have another kind of downward cycle. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the issues with Japan, and actually same with Swiss as well, and arguably with the EU, is that, you know, it took basically the best part of a black swan event of the pandemic to drive up inflation to a level whereby they could get out of negative rates. And all of a sudden, over the past year, you know, they haven't used the opportunity to give themselves enough of a buffer. Arguably, you could say the ECB have. But yeah, when you look at Switzerland, and the perfect example is Japan, is that, you know, they haven't done enough in terms of, they've been given not a get out of jail free card, because the pandemic was a terrible situation. But essentially, you know, in terms of what that did relating to inflation, etc., they should have used that to materially jump on it and get monetary policy in a much more normalized position. So that, you know, in this next phase of the economic cycle, they could look to cut if they needed to without going back into negative rate territory. And I think of the three, Japan is the one that has sort of balls that up the most. And yeah, I think it's really going to struggle. And in terms of implications on asset prices, that, you know, when you look at the yen, is that you could argue that rate hike story chatter over the past 6 weeks or so was something that certainly helped to you know, draw a little bit of a line in the sand of dollar yen moving higher. And, you know, you take that away, and there really isn't any other pillars of strength that you can sort of pin on the yen. And so, you know, it's back up in sort of 153.5. And yeah, you know, you take that away, you start bringing back in the cut chatter, and, you know, that for me is something that pushes dollar yen back up to 160 in Q1. So yeah, that's my take on it. Silenced.
Sorry. It's really noisy here again.
Pearls of wisdom that I was dropping.
Sorry. I did do a thumbs up emoji, but it was really, really busy, and I didn't want to kind of just drown out. But no, I think you're as usual. You are spot on.
That's very kind. And then what else do I want to talk about? Well, we've spoken about ECB a little bit. I just wanted to weigh in a little bit on that. Is that Lagarde obviously was like, you know, disinflation, like back on track, we're all groovy, we'll be back at 2% next year, like, you know, don't stress. But in terms of the growth outlook, which is not great, inflation is materially coming lower, and also, as we've spoken about numerous times past couple of weeks, although they won't specifically go into this, the political situation, Germany, France, etc. You could have argued that actually a 50 basis point cut yesterday from the ECB could have actually been a bit more of a signal of intent of a sort of, a whatever it takes
Well,
style ECB coming back.
well, absolutely, because we did speak about how, like, Germany, especially when now and France are itching for a 50 cut or anything. Not that I think it'll make a difference, because a cut in it, as I was saying to Klaus just now on Twitter, cutting interest rates won't fix Germany's like the structural damage that or the poor structure they've got, and the structural reform. So the structural reform that they need won't be solved by cutting rates, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm,
However, like a few of us have kind of said, don't be surprised if we start hearing more and more about 50 cuts. And there was a chance for a 50 cut this time. We have seen since the rate announcement, it seems that more and more governing members of the governing council, maybe not kind of pushing hard for a 50, but were liking the idea of a 50, if we put it that
mm,
way. I think we're up to, I think it might have even been, sorry if it wasn't Cam, but it might have even been Cam or someone that posted something that's saying about, there was like now five people kind of put out some whispers saying, actually, do you know what, I didn't mind if it was a 50. So I
mm.
think it was far more divided than it was initially let on.
Yeah, and I mean, Jan, I'm just looking at it now. Pricing for Jan is basically got 38 basis points of cuts price. So maybe all it's done is kick a 50 into January. But yeah, I agree with you. It won't materially change anything, but I certainly think that if they're wanting to calm investors, then a 50 cut does go some way to showing some sort of proactivity, let's say, instead of just being a sort of more reactive central bank
Yeah,
from their point of view.
definitely.
But yeah, so that was pretty much everything I wanted to run through on my side, as we're 25 minutes in. Jay, anything before you go off and talk to the cartel?
No, not too much. Maybe just last night I saw the Asia session. The hand selling was down 2%. So yeah, just more. What's the word? Falling below expectation and just more unimpressed markets in Asia on the stimulus front.
Chinese stimulus, right? It's all fart, no poo.
Yeah,
Said it before
pretty
and I'll
much.
say it again.
Which there was a bit of a pickup at the start of the week on that, but yeah, faded once again. So same old in
Yeah, that was the
China.
fart.
Yeah.
And actually, I tell you what, one thing to finish off on, which was a headline I saw from Wednesday with the Nasdaq, which is a little closing stat of the week. So from December the 28th, 2022, so effectively, let's call it bang on 2 years ago, if you'd invested £1,000 in the Nasdaq Composite Index 2 years ago, how much in a percentage appreciation would you be up as of now, or as of yesterday's close?
So I think it's Jay's turn, and I'm very grateful for that.
Wait, say it again.
Yeah, can we have it simple? Can we have
It's still
simpler
very
questions,
early.
please?
So you invested in the Nasdaq Composite
Yeah.
bang on 2 years ago.
Okay.
How much are you up as of yesterday in percentage terms?
How much are we up? 2 years ago, 55%.
Bear in mind, it's an index. Would you say
45%.
45%?
Fuck
Okay,
yeah,
fine.
I massively bid on that.
You basically would have doubled your money.
Yeah,
100%.
Wow.
I was gonna say double your money, but I thought if he's gone that low, he's probably had a quick chance to look at a chart, and I haven't.
But
But
yeah,
do you know? I
my
mean, do you
brain's
not
off.
think that's quite a mad statistic? That we're not
Yeah.
talking about an
It's
individual
huge.
stock here.
It's
We're talking
huge.
about an index that has, I don't know how many is in the composite, but I would say it's like 1,000 stocks in that
Yeah,
index. So that is a
it's huge.
fairly mind blowing stat. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely,
Mm.
absolutely. That's like crypto gains, bro.
Yeah. Waiting for
I
Cam's
That
statement.
was meant to be me sounding like I'm down with the kids there.
I do actually have one other thing you've just reminded me of, Ryan. With that, I don't know if you saw the
Oh God.
BlackRock. I don't know if it was a note or a letter to their institutional investors about the 1 to 2% allocation to Bitcoin. I don't know if either of you guys saw that come out last night.
I literally, when I was scrolling through Twitter waiting for the plane to get to the gate, when I landed, I saw someone post about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be interested to actually look at the fine print because a lot of these things they kind of mention in passing something like that, and then obviously people grab the headline and it's BlackRock say invest 2% into Bitcoin. So I'd
Yeah.
be keen to
Mm.
see more on that.
Yeah, it was just I think
Yeah.
the first, or at least the first that I've noticed come through, like big institution talking about having a permanent allocation. But we'll see how many more of those headlines come through.
Also, I did see something about Texas looking to do a little strategic Bitcoin reserve or something like that. But I don't know. Interesting times, I believe the phrase is.
Yep, for sure.
What a time to be alive.
Yeah.
We'll leave it there.
Lovely. Okay. I think that's all done for the week. 2
Oh,
minutes under
perfect.
time.
Well, perfect. Absolutely fantastic. Guys, thank you as always. Listeners, thank you as always for tuning in. We've actually got, obviously we're not going to give anything away, but PiQ and AlphaPicks have got a lot planned for 2025. So stay tuned on that front. It's going to get very exciting, I think. I hope.
Mm.
It's assuming that Jesse comes back from Mexico in one piece. Yeah, I'm just hoping he doesn't give the cartel my address and I'm the one that receives fingers every week, but we'll see.
You can pay
But
the
Jesse,
ransom.
have a great time over there. Yeah, guys, we'll see you all next week.
See you later.
Awesome. Thanks ever so much,
See
guys.
you later.
Bye.
Bye bye.